Hey traders, happy Sunday and welcome back to another video. I've got the camera on today. I'm in the office and I got a couple quick announcements before we jump into this week's trading setups. I don't want to make this all about my personal life by any means, but I just got back from getting married and I want to show you guys two of the coolest parts of my physical gifts, and I'm sure I'll also be sharing some more pictures and stuff on the internet as well. So let me just show you this. Here's the ring. Very classy, standard golden ring. Depending on the price of XAUUSD, I could probably get, just kidding. And then here's the other thing. You ready for this? This is crazy. My parents got me a full-blown sword as a wedding gift, which, I mean, come on. That's like the coolest gift ever. My parents are amazing for that. And it actually has engravings with my name on it. And it says on there, "The bold succeed wheresoever they go." It's just so cool. So I had to share that with you guys. It's going up on the wall. I got to find a spot for it. I mean, are you kidding me? The sword has to go on the wall. There's also like a mounting piece. This little, the shield that goes behind it. So it's gonna look cool in the office at some point or another. Sorry for all that. Of course, I'm just coming off getting married and everything, so I'm super high energy about it. It was an amazing weekend, and I'm sure you guys will see some pictures soon. With all that out of the way, let's jump into some trade setups for the week ahead. I'll talk about a couple of positions that I have, and then we'll go ahead and jump into that. So let's take a look at the dollar. There goes my sword. It's fine. It's pretty sturdy. Okay, so I wanted to start with the dollar here for a second, and let me show you what we've got here. The dollar closed at the end of last week. If you guys saw this is a daily chart. If you guys saw the dollar at the very end on Friday, it had a monster close. And what I mean by that is we had this huge level of resistance on the dollar, right? Lots of rejection all week, couldn't get above it, couldn't close above it. Until Friday, we had NFP, we had some volatility, but towards the very end of the day, the dollar shot off like a rocket and went strong right into the close. What that tells me is that if we take just a quick look at the weekly candle, look at this. We have officially closed above past resistance. And this level has to now be considered not supply, but instead demand, right? So pretty interesting stuff happening there, depending on how you're drawing levels. Just basically, however you draw it, we had a strong close above weekly resistance. And to me, that tells me that the dollar from a price action standpoint looks really strong. Okay, so with the dollar in mind, let's actually go talk about some setups on the dollar. I'll show you guys one trade that I'm in, which I am bearish on EURUSD, aka, basically going off of what we just talked about, a bullish bias on the dollar. I've been bearish on the euro and combining that, of course, trading the euro cross with the dollar. I've been short biased in this one. Some of you guys may have seen this on Friday where I had this, or not Friday, on Thursday where I was streaming and talking about this trade. Basically, I took it at the level of resistance here right across the top, and so far I've got two trades open. So I took my initial position over here and then a secondary position here, there, and so far looking pretty decent. I've got my stop loss above the highs on euro dollar. My idea here is looking for this thing to continue to trend on the higher time frame. So you take a look at the daily chart, this thing is really quite bearish, and basically I jumped into this position and look at that daily. So just like what we talked about with the dollar, where it kind of closed strong, well, that put pressure on euro dollar and brought us back down almost to the lows. So I'm looking basically to see if this week we can continue to see a euro dollar breakout to the downside and looking for this trend to continue, at which point I'll look to try and trail stops and continue that ride down. We'll see if that works out. I would like to at some point go ahead and move my stop loss to break even. That is sort of my next cue, and of course, if I do that, you guys will see it inside of the Discord channel where I share all of my trades. By the way, this is actually, today is the last day to do our sale. We have a 40% off sale going on right now. All of that will be linked down below in the description if you want to get our trade alerts, if you want to get access to our trading software, the Edge Finder, which I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second when I do some scanning on that. We have a market scanning tool that we use to sort of find our setups and that sort of thing. All of that, everything we have is currently on 40% off sale, and today is legitimately the last day to take advantage of that. So don't miss that if you have not already taken advantage of the sale. The promo code and link are down below in the description. So I do like euro dollar until this level breaks, right? If this does actually end up breaking, I'm still going to be bearish on it. This was my first real attempt to sell the euro dollar in a while, and I'm still going to be bearish if it breaks out, but I will look for a better entry on a deeper retracement. So looking at something like the 4-hour chart, if this level breaks here, then perhaps we start scanning for levels like this area here at 1.015. Do I think it's going up there? Not necessarily, but if it does, I'd be looking to potentially try again on the short side. So I have a bearish bias in the euro dollar that I'm willing to stick to for a while. And let's take a look at why. Here's the edge finder. This is the market scanner that I mentioned. This thing is giving us currently a strong sell indication on the euro crossed against the dollar. And we can see why. There's several different metrics. -7 overall score. What it does is it takes all these different metrics, counts up a tallied score, and gives us a positive or negative total score. And then we get our bias overall. So if we look at the commitment of traders data, what we have on the US dollar is we have a strong US dollar position in terms of what institutional traders are doing, according to the non-commercials in the commitment of traders report. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I've got some videos on that. You can just search up TraderNick COT on YouTube and you'll be able to find videos on that topic, but we're able to look at what institutional traders are doing based on the commitment of traders report, and it's imported directly into our software. Now, if we take a look at retail sentiment here, this is another interesting indicator. We see that the crowd is piling into longs on the euro dollar, despite the trend being very strong to the downside, as we can see here. The trend going down, the buyers here are mostly on the retail side. So retail traders are very heavy buying the euro dollar, which is actually a sell signal to us, knowing that on average, retail traders unfortunately tend to lose money. If we take a look at seasonality, which is next up on the list, what we can see is that the month of September is historically expected to be negative for the euro dollar cross. This is using historical data imported into our system and giving us a forecast based on that. Trend reading, we have a strong downtrend. GDP growth, inflation, unemployment, and interest rates fall under our fundamentals categories, like you can see right here. So if we take a look, for example, at GDP growth is the one area where the euro outperforms. Inflation, the US has lower inflation, which is considered a better indicator for currencies. If we take a look at interest rates are higher in the US. And finally, we could take a look at unemployment, where unemployment is better or lower in the United States. Okay, so all of that combined, we get a strong sell signal in the euro dollar. That is why I have been looking for and have now found a trading setup where I've been short biased on the euro dollar. Now, I know that was a long sort of introduction in terms of one trade that I'm in on euro dollar. Let's talk about some more that I could potentially pick up this week and some quick news that we can expect to see some volatility on this week. So these are your red folders for the week ahead. And if we take a look here at the Australian dollar cash news around the Australian dollar, we have the cash rate, which is basically their interest rate decision coming out. It's expected to be 2.35%. Look for any deviation there for massive moves, but still some potential volatility, even if even if the actual numbers come out just as forecasted. It could still cause some volatility on Aussie pairs. So Aussie pairs on Tuesday, we have some GDP growth expectations at 1.1%. We'll see if that matches up and how that could impact the Australian dollar. Those news figures will probably cause some volatility. Of course, you can go to forexfactory.com if you want to get the timestamps for your own local time to when these will be happening. Look at this. Bank of Canada coming out with a expected 3.25% on their interest rate, which is an incredibly, that's pretty hawkish from the Bank of Canada. And looking at that, that's going to be a very interesting thing to see if they come out as expected there as well. Okay, we also have interest rate decisions from Europe coming out. Main refinancing rate expected to go up to 1.25%. Very, very aggressive interest rate hikes from banks around the world here as we do enter a period of time where we have high levels of inflation. Central banks are acting to work against that. So, of course, these are some things. You also have unemployment numbers coming out for Canada. You have Jerome Powell speaking on Thursday. It's an action-packed week, and I want you guys to be aware. So please keep these things, mark your calendar so that you don't get blindsided by news, especially if you're a day trader out there. Let's take a look at pound USD here for a second, which continues to plummet here through the floor, it seems like. Any retest for me on the pound pairs are sells, in my personal opinion. Now we have to scroll out to the daily chart because you can see this thing is very, very sold off. It is possible that we get a swing back, and if it does swing back, where could we look for sells? Well, I'll show you what I'm thinking. I think really the first level of interest doesn't really come until we get back up to somewhere like 1.1750, 1.18 on the dot, somewhere around here, right? You have past resistance looking left. That's a pretty fair area in terms of where price could come back for some value retesting. I don't hate that idea, so potential retests could be in order, especially around, like I said, the 38.2%. But where we currently sit, there's nothing here for me. I can't buy it. I wouldn't try and buy this thing just because, again, fundamentals and the edge finder give us such a sell bias. The pound dollar has been one of the weakest registered currency pairs. So the edge finder has been really correct about being short biased on the pound dollar recently. So if we go take a look at the pound dollar, you can see this thing continues to get a strong sell reading with a continued momentum. I mean, we've been basically bearish on this pair for a very long time. I have other assets that I've been trading a lot more. I've been very much interested in shorting the euro, and I've been doing that a lot. Against several different currencies, Euro CAD, Euro Aussie, Euro NZD, Euro dollar. But then you have pound dollar also pretty dang weak as well, which has been sort of the expectation. You can see seasonality. The whole summer here has basically been a bearish expectation in terms of seasonality. It's been just a momentum push to the downside. Quite an incredible run here for the pound against the dollar especially. So that one continues to look bearish in my opinion, especially if it gets swing back to 38.2. Yeah, I could see potentially looking to try and short the pound there. Let's talk about another popular currency pair, or if you want to call it that. And another asset to talk about is, of course, gold. So gold, let's take a look at this. Gold coming off a daily level here, and not just a daily level, you guys. This is actually, you could extend this way out, and I'll show you this off of the weekly chart, where we have a major level on gold coming into play. And that puts us in an interesting predicament because, of course, we've been incredibly bearish price action wise on the 4-hour and the daily chart, but now we're coming into levels of support that have not been hit since, what was this, mid-July? So now coming back to this huge area of value. If you're a bull on gold longer term, I will say, at least mark this level on your chart so you can keep it in mind. But I personally think that we could find a bounce pretty soon on gold. It's not something that fundamentally I have a huge story for, right? Because right now there's a pretty justified move to the downside. You have a very, very hawkish Fed, which is putting pressure on gold as people flock to the US dollar as a safe haven and not the precious metal gold. So of course, gold though is a store of wealth for a lot of people, and when it does dip like this, eventually, you know, you find those value buys where people will pick up a lot of gold and start a new trend, if you will. I wouldn't personally be short-term buying gold. Longer term, I've been picking some up, I'll tell you that much, but I'm talking about more of an investment standpoint. From a short-term perspective, what I'm talking about is I think you need to start seeing some breakouts on gold before you get bullish. And that's just my personal opinion here, because if I'm looking at this, I need to see, you know, some of these pretty impressive levels of resistance actually start to break, right? Because you start marking your charts up and you say, well, wow, if this thing rallies, you've got sellers everywhere waiting for a piece of the pie. And of course, from a bullish perspective, what we'd want to see is we'd want to see the opposite. We'd want to see buyers being strong where sellers would be expected to come in, right? So we want to see those breakouts before any sort of confirmation that we could be potentially going higher. So that's my personal opinion. I think we need to see gold really make some breakout moves before we jump to conclusions on gold. And price action wise, it still looks rather bearish. And we're coming into a decision point here. We either need to start breaking and starting a new trend, or if we break out here, we could go much, much lower in the short term. So keep an eye on this level. We're coming into that weekly level of support. It's a very important level for bulls and for bears. So we'll keep track of that this week, of course, going into it. So let's take a look at USDJPY, another very popular currency pair, which remains very strong with the Fed remaining so incredibly hawkish this past week. Despite jobs numbers coming out, we had some interesting stats. So let's go take a look at that and see if we can go find last week's numbers. So what we had was 315,000. We slightly beat on jobs numbers. But then we had unemployment rate actually rise. Instead of the forecasted 3.5%, we jumped up to 3.7%, which was an interesting one for markets, initially causing some volatility on the dollar. And then we also had the average hourly earnings come down by a little bit here. Instead of the 0.4% expected, we got 0.3%. So it was a bit of a mixed NFP with lots of volatility there, and certainly the potential for the dollar to continue to be interesting going into this week with some volatility there as well. So in terms of dollar yen, I continue to be bullish on this pair and continue to be bullish just generally on the dollar. Now, looking at it off of a 1 hour chart, you can see just very, very strong price action. This to me looks like until it changes directions, remaining bullish from a technical perspective. I mean, this looks very, very pretty in terms of just higher highs, higher lows, holding levels of support. And if you're looking at this thing, you know, maybe if you're really waiting for the next push, right? Wait for breakouts above, retests, continuations, that sort of thing, could potentially be an interesting play to look out for this week. Dollar yen, one of my watch list items, probably not my favorite thing to be trading. Like I said, I do like pound dollar, I like euro dollar right now on the short side. But dollar yen also remains a pretty attractive one for me. And this is trading at a very high historical level, right? We poked up into past the 140s here this past week. We've broken out of major levels of support. And if this sort of level gets pulled back into, then the dollar yen looks a little bit more attractive in my opinion. Now, of course, this is a daily chart, so we're looking for a bit of a pullback there, but that looks like probably a 38.2%. If we zoom in here a bit on the 4 hour chart, let's see if we can find that. I'm going to guess that that's either it looks like a 38.2. Let's see. If we draw it from here, 38.2 comes right there. And if we draw from the swing low over here, we could give ourselves a bit more room. So 38, so 50%, 38, somewhere in this zone. So this to me looks like where things would actually become a bit more attractive on dollar yen should that decide to pull back a little bit this week. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's video, and I'm just going to say in advance thank you to anybody and everybody who's already been congratulating myself and my now wife with our wedding ceremony. There will be more pictures coming up on YouTube. I promise that on a live stream, and a lot of you guys have been asking, and you're too kind. So thank you guys very much for all the support, both here on YouTube with the trading stuff, as well as a little bit of my personal life as well. Thank you guys so much. And I just want to say, again, remember, if you want to join the group, if you want access to the Edge Finder, take advantage of this sale that we're doing. It's ending here today. We're going to basically, it's going to be, I think it's got like maybe 7 or 8 more hours before the sale ends. So take advantage of that. The link will be down below in the description, and we will see you back next time. Bye, guys.